Hey, what's going on, Who That Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And I have a special guest with me on the State of the Saints podcast. I have columnist of The Athletic and also the analyst from WVUE Fox 8, Jeff Duncan. How you doing, Jeff?
TJ, I'm doing great, man. Football started. Keep your fingers crossed. I think we're going to get football this fall. And you know how important it is here in New Orleans to have football for the psyche of everyone here. Let's just hope we get to see it come to fruition this fall.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people, we were really excited about the 2020 season, and hopefully, you know, things have been going in a positive direction. Hopefully we can keep that going. But that's the first question I want to ask you. There's a lot of changes going on around the Saints facility. So I just wanted to ask you, how are the players, adapting to the adjustments?
You know, it's a really good question. And I think they are settling in. I think it was really the new normal for everyone out there. It took a little while, I think, for everyone to get used to this completely different training camp.
Right.
But the players I've talked to and the coaches and administrators, I think now are in a routine, and that's really what football is all about. At some point, and you get into a routine, and I think they've had a really smart plan. I mean, we all know about the plan to have the team kind of in a semi-bubble downtown at a hotel. Some of the other players and coaches are choosing to stay at home. But I think as we get closer to the regular season opener against Tampa, you're going to see more and more players start to report down to the hotel in downtown New Orleans,
Right.
Because then they can really kind of get in a real bubble and start focusing on the season opener.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I have to ask you, as a reporter, with the Athletic, I mean, I know you and Catherine Terrell is another reporter. How are you all dealing with the adjustment? I mean, the fact that normally you all would be at the facility interviewing these players in person, but you all have to, deal with the Zoom calls now. So how are you all making the adjustment?
Well, I'll tell you the biggest adjustment, the best example I can give you is I haven't been to practice yet because Catherine, the way it works this year, we have limited access to practice, and only one person per media outlet is allowed to attend practice each day. There's only 10 reporters a day, and that includes photographers and TV people. So Catherine's carrying the torch for the Athletic right now. I'm going to go out starting Saturday and sub out for her. And it's just different, TJ. I mean, I've been to just about every training camp practice the Saints have had for the last 20 years. You know, I remember I was down when the team started at Nicholls State under Jim Haslett down in Thibodaux, and then the team ended up moving over to Jackson, Mississippi, and Millsaps College under Sean Payton. I've been up to West Virginia at the Greenbrier. I like this time of year. It's an exciting time of year, so I want to be out there, but I'm forced to kind of follow from afar for a couple of days until I get my spot in the rotation. And you're right, we're doing all these interviews over Zoom calls, which is not ideal, but hey, it's the best we could do under these circumstances. I certainly understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about, just keeping the players safe and, just doing your part to just make sure that the NFL season, is conducted successfully. I think that's the most important thing, of it all. Jeff, you mentioned, you've been covering the Saints for a very long time, longer than any other reporter nationally has been reporting for the Saints. So I have to ask you, over the last about 3 to 4 years, the Saints have been one of the best teams in the league. How fun has it been, from the time that you started to now? How fun has this team been to watch?
Well, it's been pretty remarkable change. There's no doubt about it. I'm actually writing a story right now for The Athletic about kind of the big picture of the comeback of the Saints organization from Hurricane Katrina.
Right.
And look, you know that well. You're a New Orleanian. You know how the city changed. And It's been 15 years, TJ. It's hard to believe it's been that long. But I think it's one of the great stories in sports. From when I started covering the team to where they're at now, not only their play on the field, but just as dramatic has been the change off the field, just how successful they are in the local community, how popular they are, how popular they are nationwide. The perception and image of the organization have changed really dramatically. And I'll give you a good example. They opened the season this year, right, against the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Right.
It's going to be in the primetime spot. And I mean primetime by meaning the Sunday afternoon game on Fox. That's the number one spot you want to be in on Fox
Yeah,
Sports.
true.
Over 90% of the country is going to get that game.
Mm.
And I can tell you, before Katrina, the Tampa Bay Bucks Saints game would not have been broadcast to 90% of the country. So it just shows you how things have changed. I mean, the Saints have been with Drew Brees and Sean Payton. They've been one of the most successful, high-profile teams in the league, and that wasn't the case for a long time here in New Orleans. So it's a very welcome change.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest to that. I mean, that's one of the main reasons I got into broadcasting, Jeff, is because the Saints at that time wasn't that good, and the only time that you can check them out was on WWL radio and Jim Henderson.
Right.
He has played a tremendous role in my life. Getting me to the point I am in broadcasting, as far as I would say as a hero of mine. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the only way I can remember us watching. Listening to the Saints games, but now you look at the New Orleans Saints and how successful they've been over the past 15 years. It definitely has been fun to watch, and I'm very excited about this season. But I want to move on and talk a little bit about training camp. One player for the second year in a row has been on the lips of a lot of members of the Who Dat Nation, and that is wide receiver Emmanuel Butler. Emmanuel Butler last season, he had a really good training camp. However, he didn't play in many games. He didn't play any games at all. As a matter of fact, only the preseason game, I think, against the Miami Dolphins. And I mean, he didn't play anymore. So I'm wondering, and I need you to tell me, do you feel like Emmanuel Butler will see the field this season?
I don't know. I think it's too early to tell. I really do. I've talked to a lot of people the last few days about how the wide receiver core is shaking out, and they all say the same thing. It's going to be really competitive. Without preseason games, I think it's going to be hard for some of these young receivers to crack into the top of the depth chart. I think it's pretty established right now.
Right.
Mike Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, and Traquan Smith are the clear top three receivers.
Right.
Now, there's going to be some competition after that. We know Deontay Harris is going to work his way into the mix, but he's limited just by his size and by his role on special teams. But I remember last year, there was no receiver more impressive, no young receiver more impressive than Emmanuel Butler. I was actually prepared to write a big profile of him. I talked to his high school coach, his college coaches, because we expected him to have a role, but it really does illustrate how hard it is for young receivers to come into this offense. One thing I've learned, I've been working on a book project about Drew Brees and Sean Payton, and got a lot of time with the coaches and the players on this offensive side of the ball. And I've learned a lot about how complex and sophisticated this offense is. And it's hard for young receivers to come in and really get it all down. And I think once they got through training camp and they turned their attention to the regular season last year, everything changed on Emmanuel Butler and all the young receivers. And it just became difficult for them to contribute once the game planning started for the regular season. But there's no doubt about it, they're very high on him. And he's looked good so far in camp from everyone I've talked to. So I think he's got a real high ceiling, and I think the team is really high on his future.
Well, I do have a follow-up question about that. Do you feel like the fact that we didn't see him last season was because the Saints may not have wanted to affect his confidence on the field? Do you think that may be a reason why we didn't see him back in 2019?
Yeah, I think there's some of that. And I think there's also just the Saints put a premium on you being able to know where you're going, and especially at the receiver position. So much is based on the communication, the body language, the connection between Drew Brees and the receiver core. They asked the receivers to do so many reads on the run, and they've got to, as Sean Payton, you've heard him say it, TJ, a million times, you've got to paint the picture for the quarterback.
Yeah.
Drew Brees needs receivers to go to the spot he thinks they're going to, and that's why they've been so successful, and a lot of reasons why they don't turn the ball over very much. You just don't see very many, one guy going right and Drew Brees throwing left. You don't see it very often in this offense. And that's pretty remarkable considering how much they throw the ball, how much they put on the receiver's shoulders. And I just think they couldn't really take a chance on these young guys getting in there early on in this season. Last season, there was just too much on the line.
Yeah, that is true. They do not turn the ball over. I think they have NFL record last season for least turnovers in a season. So, yeah, they definitely are not a team that commits a lot of turnovers. So, yeah, but hopefully we get opportunity to see Emmanuel Butler. I know the Who Dat Nation really wants him to go out there, and we want to see what he has. From one competition to another, the offensive line. For the last two practices, we've seen Eric McCoy at the center position and Cesar Ruiz, the first round pick out of Michigan, at the guard. Do you see Eric McCoy starting this season as center and Cesar Ruiz as a guard? Or do you feel like the Saints are going to probably like shift these two guys around throughout practice and may the best man win?
What you just said. I mean, they're going to cross-train both those guys. I think in a practice or two, you're going to see Ruiz go to center, McCoy go to right guard, and that's going to continue throughout camp. And they're going to get a feel for it. There's really it's a good problem to have. You're going to have two guys that ultimately are going to be able to play either of those positions in the event that one of them might go down at some point during the season. And we're getting to see Nick Easton right now at left guard in place of Andres Pete. And I think this is an area, TJ, that the Saints have improved dramatically in the last year. Their depth along the offensive line, I think, has become really an advantage for them. They've got a lot of that. Ethan Greenidge is a guy not a lot of people talk about. He's a very good player, and I think he's going to end up being a starter in this league at tackle. And he's getting some work at guard as well, sort of very similar to what Andres Pete does. He can swing between guard and tackle positions. Cam Tom's a guy they're very high on. Will Clapp. They've got a lot of depth there, and I think, unfortunately, the numbers game is going to catch up to some of these guys. I think they're going to stash a bunch of them on the practice squad, but there's going to be some guys that don't make this active roster that end up playing for other teams in the league on the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, the Saints always have some good, solid offensive linemen, and they have a really good rotation. I mean, we've seen Calamente. I mean, how many times where offensive lineman went down, he came in. I mean, he got a starting job out there in Houston. I mean, and the list goes on and on. So I do agree there are going to be some guys that are going to end up going to other teams and be starters out there and contribute in a big way. Speaking of offensive line, their job is to protect the quarterback, and we have a quarterback competition going on a little bit, and for the number 2 spot, that is with Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. Have you heard anything about the progress of Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill?
Well, I think they're both playing very well early on. I mean, it's very, very early. They only had a few practices, but I think what's going to come down to for Jameis Winston is how quickly can he pick up the offense because he hasn't had a ton of reps on the field with this offense. That's going to give an advantage, I think, to Taysom Hill. But as long as Drew Brees is here, this is going to be Drew Brees' offense, and they're going to tailor everything to him. And I think that's going to probably force Sean Payton and the offensive staff to fall back on the same kind of role that they had last year, where Taysom Hill's the jack of all trades kind of guy, and they need a veteran backup the way Teddy was. And I think that's what Jameis Winston will end up being. He'll be the guy that comes in if Drew Brees were to get hurt or go down in a game, because they want to use Taysom Hill and get as much out of him because he's such an effective weapon on offense for them. They really don't want to have him be just the backup quarterback at this stage. Now, I think everything will change if, say, Drew Brees retires after this season and they open up the competition. Then I think you'll have kind of a true one-on-one matchup against those two guys if Winston wants to come back here. But they paid Taysom Hill a pretty decent salary, certainly more than they pay a special teamer. They were basically rewarding him for the role he's been playing on offense and potentially the future he might have here. And I think that spoke volumes to how much they think about him.
Yeah. Taysom Hill is a guy that a lot of unanswered questions are about. They know that he has all this talent. He has the speed. He's elusive. I mean, he's powerful and strong, and he's exciting to watch. But there's a question about him only taking 15 passes down, 15 passes at the quarterback position. So a lot of people don't really know how to evaluate him. So let me ask you this. Do you think that the New Orleans Saints may use him a little bit more in the offense than they did probably in the last 2 years? Do you think they're going to have an uptick of his snaps?
Yeah, I think we'll see a very similar role to what he played against the Vikings in the playoffs last year when he had that great game, had a 50-yard pass, also had a couple of big runs for this team. I think we're going to see him play a very similar – in other words, I think we'll see about that amount of snaps and that amount of touches for him in a variety of different ways. And I would remind people and understand the the questions about him and the uncertainty. It always cracks me up a little bit because people act like Taysom Hill is almost like this Tommy Stevens who they have on the team now, who's converted. I mean, Taysom Hill was a great college quarterback.
Yeah,
I mean, he played quarterback his whole career.
Yeah.
People act like he's a converted tight end or something. He's had a lot of time at quarterback. He is a quarterback. So it's no different than the questions you would have in my mind of any rookie quarterback coming into the league that hasn't played before. Of course, they haven't had that many snaps, but that doesn't mean they can't do it. And I think Saints fans should trust this offensive staff and certainly Sean Payton to at least, know what they're seeing in practice every day. And I think the biggest reason they have so much confidence in Taysom Hill is not just what he's done on the field and his limited snaps, but also what they see behind closed doors, in the meeting rooms, in practices. I mean, they see this guy and his work ethic, and I think they know that gives him a chance to be successful. Now, he may not be successful as an NFL quarterback, but they feel like he's got everything working in his advantage to where he has a chance to be successful because of his work ethic and his rare athleticism. And so I think that's where their confidence is based at.
I mean, you can see the development over the course of time over the these 3 years he's been with the New Orleans Saints. I mean, when they got him from the Green Bay Packers, I mean, you mostly seen him on special teams, and then as the years went by, they put him in different packages, and every time you put him in a role, I mean, he exceeds expectations. I mean, you can make an argument, Jeff, in my opinion, he was the best quarterback on the field in the wild card game. So I mean, he really did an outstanding job. Every time his number is called, he does something spectacular. So I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, he never, he didn't throw enough passes. So I'm going to dismiss him. I feel like, if he's given a fair opportunity, we might be looking at Drew Brees' successor. I mean, we never know. Let's talk about the running backs. And this is a hot topic, among the Who Dat Nation, is the running game. Do you feel like the New Orleans Saints are going to be more committed to the run this season than they have in years past?
Well, it's a hard question to answer. I think the Saints have always been somewhat committed to the run, but I think as long as you've got Drew Brees as your quarterback, you're going to put the ball in the hands of your best player, and that's Drew Brees. But that said, I think they'd like to run the ball better than they did a year ago, and I think they will, because I think Alvin Kamara is going to be healthy, and he wasn't healthy, as we all know now, for most of last season. And he's a dynamic player, a rare talent, a guy that it's documented. I mean, he's as good at making people miss as anybody in the NFL when he's healthy. I've never seen a guy, TJ, that can have the balance he has, not lose his speed or acceleration. He's just a rare cat. And I really believe this is a big year. He knows it for him. I mean, it's a contract year. His agent knows it. He's in great shape. So I think we're going to see a really productive season as long as he can stay healthy. And also, Latavius Murray was better than I thought he was when they signed him. I was kind of meh, and he impressed me. And I'm really eager to see Ty Montgomery in this offense. Yeah. I think this team has done a really good job of kind of bringing in some versatile weapons. We know you mentioned Emmanuel Sanders, Ty Montgomery. I think they're going to have a lot of these interchangeable parts at the receiver and running back position, along with, Taysom Hill, to where this offense is going to be a lot more unpredictable, a lot more explosive this season. And they need to be, because that was an area that really dropped off. They have not had the explosive quick strike plays that they did 5-10 years ago. And they've got to get back to that, as opposed to these 10, 12 play march down the field drives. Those are very difficult.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing if they're going to commit more to the run this season. I just feel like, the fact that Drew Brees, is 41 years old, I mean, they need to have a more of a balanced attack. I think about, Jeff, like I usually use this example here on the State of the Saints podcast about Peyton Manning. When he was in the twilight of his career with the Denver Broncos, they made more of a commitment to the running game and also playing elite defense. And I feel like, that really helped Peyton Manning, especially when him dealing with some of the issues that he was dealing with. I think that kind of helped them be able to win that Super Bowl title against the Panthers. So it's not, I understand that Drew Brees, he's not dealing with the same thing similar to Peyton Manning, but I do feel like a more balanced attack may be beneficial to the success of the team, especially like in those playoff games. I mean, we look at like the 49ers, they had like a 3 running back set. Tennessee Titans, I mean, they lean heavily on Derrick Henry. So I just feel like the running game can really, catapult them to that next level. And if you just so happen to get into a shootout, you have the most accurate quarterback in NFL history to help you out in that regard. So,
well, let me say this. I mean, a lot of criticism. I mean, that's probably not the right word, but a lot of people were critical of the Saints' performance against the Vikings. And look, Drew Brees did not play his best game, but if you really go back and watch that game, the Saints got whipped up front. Oh, yeah. And the offensive line was very uncharacteristically beaten across the board, and they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't run it. So it wasn't just the commitment to the run. At some point as a head coach, he looks at it and says, we're not moving the ball on the ground. We've got to do something. And I think that lack of success, starting with the offensive line and how they were beaten up front in the trenches, really dictated that game. It's not all on the offensive line. A lot of people didn't play well. I mean, go back and watch Marshawn Lattimore. He couldn't guard Adam Thielen at all on third down. I mean, it was ridiculous. They had a lot of their best players did not play well in that game, and that's why they lost.
Yeah. I mean, with Adam Thielen, I mean, he it seems like Lattimore, that's like his kryptonite. Every time they play each other, he seems like he gets the best of Lattimore, as good as Lattimore has been in the Saints uniform. But I have to agree with you on that. The offensive line didn't really play well. Probably one of the reasons why Larry Warford is no longer a Saint. But I still believe that the running game needs to be very, very important to the New Orleans Saints. And I mean, you got 2 young studs up front now. I mean, regardless to how you're going to line them up, rather it's Cesar Ruiz at center, Eric McCoy at guard, or vice versa. I mean, you got some studs there, and a first-team All-Pro, and a guy that can be a first-team All-Pro, and Teron Armstead. I mean, you have some incredible offensive linemen, and now you have Andres Pete losing 30 pounds. I mean, he looks incredible. I mean, he has a little bit of a setback with the broken hand, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to bounce back and have a really good, solid year. Lastly, Jeff, I want to ask you about you will receive the 2019 Story of the Year award in the state of Louisiana. So I want to know how do you feel about receiving such a prestigious award?
Well, thanks for asking about that. I mean, I'm humbled and honored. I mean, it's a great honor to have. We've been fortunate to win it in the past a few times, but it's been a while. But more importantly, TJ, it was important to raise more awareness to the story. I mean, it was a very sad story about Carver High School's proposed football stadium they were trying to get built down on their campus. And unfortunately, the money that was raised by some local investors and some local do-gooders, if you will, it all kind of got squandered, and I don't think there was any mean intention behind it. Right. It's just a sad, sad story, and it could have been a great story for Carver High School. What struck me when I first moved to New Orleans, I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and my high school, we had a football stadium right on our campus, and every high school we played had their own football stadium. I get to New Orleans with this great football tradition and great football interest. And I was amazed that every high school didn't have their own football stadium. Right. It blew me away. And so when I would go to of course, I've heard of Carver High School, Marshall Faulk's alma mater. Yeah. It surprised me they didn't have their own football stadium when the football was so important to the school. Right. And now I know part of it has to do with just the small geographic footprint we have here. There's just not a lot of land in New Orleans to build football stadiums, not a lot of money for some of the public schools either. So I thought the idea originally, the dream of building a football stadium for Carver was a great idea, and unfortunately it got sidetracked. But the good news is the story helped, I think, shine a light on it and hopefully raise enough awareness. Now there's some interest of a local group of investors who want to see that project through and complete that project for the school and hopefully for the kids. Because really, I think ultimately, TJ, what happened is the kids got lost in this whole story. I mean, the whole story should have been about we're building a stadium for these kids so they have a stadium of their own and they can have some pride and the community can have some pride. And that got lost in a lot of political infighting, I think, unfortunately. So hopefully in the end we can get that story a happy ending, because it certainly isn't happy right now.
Yeah, like I was telling you off the air, I have an emotional investment. I graduated from Carver High School. I can remember like sixth period of PE back there playing, on that wide open field back there.
Yeah.
And it just, when I seen those pictures, it just brought back so many memories. Now, it doesn't look the way it did when I was there, but I mean, it looks much better. But
yeah, the school is great.
Yeah,
the school itself is beautiful.
Yeah, but I mean, it just brought back so many memories, and hopefully, they get the funding that they need in order to, build that stadium, because I would love to see as a fellow Ram a beautiful state-of-the-art stadium where the Rams can come out that tunnel and whoop some butt. So looking forward to that. So
I would too. It'd be a great ending to a story that started almost a decade ago now. It'd be nice to see it have a happy ending. I'm with you.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Before you go, let everyone know how they can reach you, and on Twitter, social media outlets that you're on.
Yeah, look, thanks for the opportunity, TJ. They can follow me at Jeff Duncan _ on the end of my name, and also anytime, usually on my timeline, I'll be promoting the stories that we run at The Athletic, and I'll put in another shameless plug for my book coming out. It's October 13th. It's called Peyton and Breeze, the men behind the greatest offense in NFL history. I'm going to make an argument in the book that the Saints have had the greatest offense, not only because of the amount of yards and all the big blowouts and the points that they put up, but also they've done it now for 15 years, and no other offense in the history of the league has been able to evolve and adapt the way the Sean Payton, Drew Brees offense has over this long a period of time. So hopefully, Saints fans out there, you get a chance to check that book out once it comes out October 13th.
Definitely. October 13th, we'll be looking forward to the book coming out. And we definitely would love to hear, your take on them having the best offense, which I'm pretty sure a lot of us agree with. The greatest offense that the NFL has ever seen. Jeff Duncan, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, TJ. I really do.
All right, you take care.